Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Film Alchemist podcast. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, here for a brief introduction before today's very exciting episode. Guys, it's official. We're on Patreon. Patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. We're beginning to grow our community over there, and we need your help, right? The more of you guys that come join us over there, the bigger and better and more fun we can make this show for all of us. So for as little as $1 a month, guys, you can get in, start to join some of our social activities, Discord, Zooms, all that good stuff. For a little bit more, we have different tiers. We use a Highlander ranking system, which is very official, very scientific. You can begin to curate the exact movies that you want us to cover. So a lot of exclusives over there, a lot of voting on episodes, a lot of fun stuff. More than anything, guys, it helps us, and we feel like it's going to help us give you the show you want. So again, that's patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. We appreciate so much those of you who have already joined and help us out, and we can't wait to meet those of you who are about to. Something you can do for free to help the show: leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you find the show, especially if that to be Apple Podcast app. That's a way to punch up at the algorithmic overlords. Help us find more new friends to bring into the Alchemist tent, cave, something like that. The Cave of Alchemist Solitude with Friends. We'll think of a more catchy, snappy title, but you guys get what I'm asking here. Thank you again for those of you who do it. Your kind words do not get lost on us. You can go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, Film Alchemist. We have video versions of most of our podcasts there, along with a lot of other fun stuff we're working on for you over there, so go find that. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, or find us on any of the socials that you're on. That's a great way to get a hold of us. Just want to chat. You want to let us know the kind of stuff you want to hear about. We love to hear from you guys. Thank you. All right. That's enough business. Today's very special episode. We are talking about Creep, starring Mark Duplass. I love this movie, and what I love most about this movie is I remember seeing it in theater and giving it a meh, right? Like, it just kind of was lost on me in the first viewing. I came back to it because today we're joined by our very special friend, Jessica Rose, who we just met. This was one of those people you meet, everyone, she's really nice. We've been following her on Twitter for a while. And finally getting to meet Jessica, it was like an explosion of the brightest sunshine in our lives. From the moment we've met Jessica, she's brought us nothing but joy and increased happiness. And then when we got to talk to her, she's so funny and insightful. And it felt like talking to an old friend for the very first time, for the 1,000th time. It was very strange. But we have absolutely fallen in love with Jessica. She's amazing. And for her to pick this movie was a great choice, because I found this time around there's so many things that I had not appreciated on the first viewing. And I do think this is one of those possibly destined for cult classic, if not already there, kind of movies. So again, Jessica's a writer, a horror writer mostly. She's a horror artist. So we'll have information where you can find her in the show notes and details. And it's one of those things. We actually met Jessica through our friend Rachel Reeves, who's also amazing. You'll be hearing her later this month. But we have I know a lot of people talk about the toxicity of Twitter and the internet and this and that. But meeting someone as special as Jessica, who just absolutely makes the day better, right? You're like, my day is better lived for having her in my world. And I know Alex agrees with me 100%. So it was an honor to meet and finally get to talk to Jessica. It was amazing to dissect Creep. I hope you guys enjoy this show as much as we do. And I hope you go support the show. Patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. I'm sorry for cheapening the sentiment with business, but you know how we do. In all seriousness, though, Jessica, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to have you back in the future. Enjoy Creep. Guys, welcome to the show. Our very special guest today, Jessica Rose. Thank you so much for making the time.
Of course, thank you.
All right, before we get started here, Jessica, would you like to give a brief introduction to yourself and where everyone can find your work?
Absolutely. I am a horror writer. I'm a horror artist as well. I'm currently getting more into digital art and really enjoying that. I'm between platforms right now, so just keep an eye out for where I'm going. I've got a good couple of projects down the pipeline that have been in the pipeline for a while, so finally excited to share that. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JJRose7, and JJ is spelled out JAY.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll have all this in the show notes too. All right, so we were a fan of Jessica. We reached out to you and asked if you would be kind enough to come to the show, and you brought an absolute delightful film today. Would you like to tell us what we're watching and why you chose it?
We are watching Patrick Brice's Creep, the 2014 version.
Thank you.
Yeah, we decided we had to clarify because if you go to Letterboxd, apparently there's 8,000 movies called Creep.
Surprisingly, very popular title.
I don't even think I've ever even really seen that on. I know I've like rated it on Letterboxd, but I don't think I've ever had to like search it.
We also did not just watch the 3-minute music video for Creep by Radiohead. This is a movie.
It was a full film, guys.
Don't Google Creep because it will for sure come. It will be the first thing that comes up instead.
Oh my gosh. It's a found footage horror movie. It's got a real good slow burn to it. It stars Mark Duplass and also Patrick Brice, and I don't want to give away too much up front. Let's see. So
one of them is a creep.
Yeah. Mark Duplass is an absolute creep.
Maybe both of them. I'll make the case for that later.
Oh, I want to hear that so bad because I feel like I sympathize a lot with Patrick Brice's character, Aaron, who gets himself into an unfortunate situation. He's kind of like a little victim of circumstance where here's the cat, where
Yay!
where he thinks he's signing on for a video project, and it turns out that his subject is a little creepier than he could even imagine.
Yeah, it's kind of the unfortunate end game of a lot of Craigslist postings, right? But what I really latched onto this time watching it is it's Aaron character, right? Aaron's the filmographer.
Mm-hmm.
Is Aaron has this kind of toxic Midwestern politeness that there are so many times in the movie where, because watching it the second time, right? This is one of those movies that the trailer and the title and everything, it's a foregone conclusion movie. You, within 90%, know exactly how this movie's going to end, and then you got a 50-50 on who, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch it the second time, I was stunned by how much tension they are still able to draw from every scene, knowing full well where the destination is. And I think it's this beautiful, because they constantly are laying out, right? Joseph is constantly laying out these red flag moments. And watching Aaron at every turn just yield to, it's cool, man, not rock the boat and trying to be polite, it makes it so much more tense. Alex, what did you think of that?
I'm going to push back a little bit on that because
shit! All right, we're going to fight in front of company. That's fine.
Don't fight in front of the kids.
Not in front of the kids.
There is a little bit of this Midwesternness. Like, I fully agree with. There is a level of like human decency you run into when you're in a situation like if someone hands you $1,000 at the beginning of a job, like when you know you're going to get paid 2 weeks later, you're like, well, all right, I'm going to get paid 2 weeks later. So what am I going to do now? When you get handed $1,000 at the beginning of the job, there is a level of guilt that you feel like if you're prepaid for a gig, you're like, man, I got to stick around. Like not doing it is wrong. It's stealing. Like that to me is where Midwestern politeness comes from. However, I also think there is this toxicity to being a documentary filmmaker. I work, like I said on the show, I work in documentary TV, I work in this kind of stuff, and I've worked with a lot of these guys. Like, there's a level of willingness you have to stick around. And I think the thing that makes me so uncomfortable because like I was yelling at the TV last night. Like I was watching it with my wife. I'm like, I don't understand this. Like there's a logic to this that I don't get because like I would not stick around, especially once it got dark. You'd be like, I gotta go. Like give me my fucking car keys. I'm leaving. Like there's that, but there also is a level of, and I hate, but like this toxic artist type thing that you have to stick around to see what's going to happen.
Suffering artist.
Especially after there's the big, like, there is like the turn in the middle of this. Like, he's weird to begin with. There's nothing not weird about what's happening. At no point do we sit here and go, well, this seems pretty Dear Zachary to me. Like, it's like Dear Zachary times 1,000 horrible minutes, you know?
Don't bring up Dear Zachary.
You can't not bring up Dear Zachary watching this movie.
like my day's ruined.
Yeah, Dear Zachary, put the lotion in the basket so I don't have to get the hose again. Jessica, what do you make of this kind of at the core? Not to like belabor the you know symbolisms of the wolf and the lamb, but I was like, this is an absolute innocent lamb, like the innocence of the lamb being led to slaughter, and we have no ability as an audience to veer off this course. It makes it really hard. What do you make of this nice Aaron angle?
So now I don't know, and I'm thinking without like writing anything down, but the way I saw it was, it's very interesting. The dynamic is, from a woman's standpoint, I was like, I am Aaron 90% of the time, whether it's, you know, just it's meeting somebody or when I'm at work, I have that horrible, toxic Western.
Yeah, right.
like manner. Like I don't ever want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't ever want to make somebody think I'm not listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want somebody to think that I'm judging them, even if I am. I don't want to let them, like, who wants to let somebody else know that? And then you have these two people in this very intimate, like, situation that, and he knows it's intimate off the bat, which is really, I really would love to, like, explore that, like, documentary filmmaker kind of angle, because that is interesting, because it's almost like we get this weird perspective where, Joseph, Mark Duplass, is like the voyeur. He's constantly watching us, but it's also the other way around. Patrick Bryce, as Aaron, is always watching him. So that's kind of interesting. But I just thought it was, from when I was watching it, I thought it was really interesting because I was like, it is this strange sort of like little gender trope bend where Patrick is in this it's almost like a blind date kind of a situation, and that happens a lot more than you think it is. I've been in, not exactly in that position because but I've been in that situation where you're like, this is a weird situation, this guy's kind of weird, I don't know how to get out of it, so I'm just gonna like yes my way through and hope he doesn't come at me with an axe and put a mask on and attack me.
Oh my god,
that would be a horrible blind date indeed. Yeah. So the mindset then, Jessica, is it just if you feel something is not okay, just don't make it worse by calling it out? Is that, it's a see no evil kind of thing, right?
It's this weird, I don't want to say, it's not ignorance because it's definitely not that. It's being aware and trying to figure out how to make it out of that situation intact. I think that I'd like to think that I'd be the person in the situation. Sometimes I'm very, very fight or flight. And there's an interesting little play on this that goes on there. But, you know, depending on the situation, I'll fight. I actually am like really impulsive. But in other situations, more so like this, where it comes to a stranger and it comes to how that person would think of me and how my reaction would hurt that person's feelings, I do think I give it a lot more thought, and I don't immediately fly out of there. I like to think that I'd be the person, especially with as many horror movies that I've watched and read about, that I would be like, oh, I'd be out of that situation in a second.
Yeah.
But I'm not, because I have actually been in that position, knowing in my head, you should be out of here. You should get out of here. You should leave right now. I don't.
Well, I think that's why it works on a horror level, right? Because it's the funny joke of Scream is that Randy, who knows all the rules, still gets killed. right? And there's this. I think that's why this movie works, is because we all know that you should leave. But that's why I would say, because I don't think being kind is ever toxic, but there is a point where, like you said, it's like, don't make it worse, right? Don't call it out, because what if I'm wrong? And then, oh, God, what will they feel? And that mentality, when you're like, yeah, this might be an axe murderer, is fucking insane. And it's a brilliant way to frame this conflict.
Yes, it's definitely it's interesting and really relevant now, since so much discussion is being brought up of when people say like when people are victims of some traumatic event, no matter what it is, and they decide to discuss it later, it's like this weird this weird delay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what they're showing a lot there with Aaron, because he's put in this very unique position. I don't think a lot of I'm being a total I am stereotyping here, but like I don't think a lot of guys are in that position all the time. A lot of like
no, that's not a stereotype. That's,
yeah, we can back you up.
There's no stereotyping here. That is wildly accurate.
How often do you guys meet up with another man that you've never met before? And well,
even when I do, I don't worry about him like mauling me.
I don't worry. Like I can tell you the few times I've worried about, like, again, it's weird to watch this movie realizing that I actually have been in these situations before, like doing the shows that I've done. I'm like, huh, okay, I've almost definitely been murdered at least once. But like, when you roll up to a house for a job, like there's never, like, we've been to, right outside of Augusta, Georgia. In fact, we were in this small town right outside of Augusta, Georgia. We rolled up to this house, and there's a huge shed, and it's filled with guns, and there's a Confederate flag over it. And I'm like, it's me and an assistant camera who has a big ponytail and that kind of thing. We roll, I'm like, there's a chance. Like, it's in the middle of the woods. No one would ever know. Like, there's a decent shot. Who knows? Like,
oh my God,
anytime. But like that to me is a really fascinating thing about creep in general, is that Aaron's willing to take that chance for money. And like, they bring it up in the middle of the movie, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yes.
That they brought up that point, because like this movie, and don't ask me how I know this, but just based on scenery, this movie in the crest line is clearly shot in Lake Arrowhead, which is out here in LA, out here like an hour outside LA. It's up in Lake Arrowhead. My parents actually used to live up there, and it is at night terrifyingly dark. Like, there is no lights. It's not it's well populated, but populated by people who don't want to be bothered. So like, there is an aspect to that was that much more terrifying, as I'm like, okay, all these people are, no one would help him, even if like, because he'd be running outside, be like, quiet, you're gonna wake up the neighborhood. Like, there is like this weird aspect to that I thought about. But when you are, like, Aaron is a struggling filmmaker, so that's the idea. Like, if someone offers you $1,000, which in a lot of cases is, like, sad to say this in LA, but half your rent maybe. If someone offers you $1,000 to spend 8 hours filming with them, you're gonna take it. And like, that aspect of it, and the need for money, and the concept of just like, this is a job like anything else, is, I think, the thing that like spooks me to begin with, because like there's nothing about that that's not terrifying and not totally relevant and real in the way like all of us have conducted ourselves in any sort of creative endeavor at this point.
Well, this is kind of the horrifying Faustian bargain of the movie, right? Because the thing that I had forgotten that really struck me in this movie is, you see the turn where Aaron's like, oh shit, I can really cash in now. Right? And when he starts filming his nightmares, this is my question, right? So he wakes up from a dead sleep in a nightmare, not sweaty, hair not disheveled, and is like, oh, I'll do a dream journal. Are we to believe he actually was in a hot tub with peach fuzz doing a blood tubby? No, I think he's absolutely authoring this, and he said, oh shit, I can cash out now on the real big documentary.
I mean, and go back before that.
There's that weird fucking turn where you're like, oh shit. Because at first it's an innocence thing, but once you see him somewhat buy into the I can milk this, then his fate is all the way sealed.
I mean, that happens before that, though. Like, This happens when he shuts the camera off and Aaron and Joseph gives this
And
confession.
kept it
That
going.
is something.
Yes.
And kept it going. That is something horribly morally bankrupt people do. Like, okay, honestly, would you have kept a camera going if someone said turn the camera? Like, I would not.
Me?
Because
Yes. I would in a heartbeat.
no. But there's your Midwestern ice. That to me is wrong. I don't want to do that. That's violating someone's trust. It's paid me $1,000.
I'm the wolf in Midwestern Nights clothing, Alex. That's the trick. What do
You
you
are,
make of this,
certainly.
Jessica?
I thought I made completely different. I drew completely different like perspective from that. That's interesting. And now I have to rewatch it because I have to keep that in mind. I was thinking that he was like, oh wow, like at some point he's like, I got myself into a situation with this man who might be not well. I'm going to keep this rolling for evidence because I'm always thinking, it's almost like why do I call my mom before I meet up with anybody? Because it's like I want them to know, like here's my like my location in case I don't return.
Right.
And I still do it out of habit. Even it's not even just like for dating purposes. It's just for even when I would travel for work, I would send my mom and my husband my hotel information just so that they knew where I was.
Totally.
But I was thinking he kept it rolling because he was like, I gotta look at this for evidence. But I mean, evidence could be destroyed, so it is interesting that he was filming.
Well, there's that weird
I
moment
thought he
too
just
where
like keeping receipts. Like he was like,
yeah.
That's fair. That's fair assumption.
But when he calls the cops, right, he doesn't say, hey, I have the footage of the violent encounter, just that he wants to report it, right? Because he doesn't like, hey, man, like I know he says he got this package and it had a knife and this and that, but he could have gone to the police station with his camera and say, hey, don't you think this is pretty fucked up?
He could have gone to the police,
and he's saving
so
that
much
for
earlier
the
in the
red
movie.
carpet. That's what I was thinking the whole time.
it is interesting. I was watching that point and I was like, that is it. I've worked in the state court before and they can't do anything. A lot of the times police can't do anything until something violent happens.
That's insane.
But it's like, well, I don't want anything violent to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to that point.
Right. By that point, it could be too late. Like
By that point, if violence is happening, it's already too late.
Fair point. Yeah.
It is interesting because that is something, and especially now with like some of these like gun bills that like people like men who are like, I forgot what bill, I would have to go back and look. So nobody quote me. I am not a political person. I do not know what I'm talking about half the time, but
Same.
I know I saw something that they were trying to pass a bill or they did pass a bill where people who have stalking charges on them can buy a gun. And I was like, if you are stalking somebody, I don't think you should be able to own a weapon, like an issued weapon. That's kind of scary, but it's not something that is taken seriously,
Yes.
or as serious as it should be until the point where it is too late, and it's gotten to a point where it's so bad that they need like so much evidence. And I mean, phone calls, like they told them, phone calls, like somebody can call you, they're allowed to call you as many times as they want. Yeah. But if you're getting 50 calls a day from somebody, it's very frightening.
And I think that's part of the thing the movie plays with is by the time we know what's happening, there is an inability to change the narrative, right? And when he calls the cops and he tries this and that, even if he's made the bargain that he wants because by the end of the movie, right, when he willingly is like, I'll go meet up with you and brings no weapons. They have a lovely bow on that at the end, and we'll get towards that. But just the fact that he even went shows you the fact that he knew he was on his own and no one was going to help. And I think that is but even in this system, right, we err so much on, well, we don't want to accuse someone of, being a naughty stalker. They might be a nice stalker and they'll work it out of their systems. That's a fucking crazy place to start this discussion.
Not gonna lie, I've never heard of a stalker working it out of their system, but keep going. It's fine.
I mean, that's what, but so I want to go back. We're going to jump back a little bit now that we kind of dissected Aaron's bargain here. Mm-hmm. I fucking love Mark Duplass in this role so much. He's so insanely just because he's madcap, but not in an over the top, melodrama way.
Yeah.
Walk me through your first impressions of kind of this character that Mark Duplass is meeting, because we start off and it's, I have cancer, I'm gonna die. This is gonna be my Michael Keaton movie where I leave a video diary, right? It seems kind of cool. There are so many red flags in this moment. So Alex, I want to start at the tubby. This to me was one of what I love about this scene so much is it is something that all of us dads have done. It all happened to us as kids. It's a cherished moment. The perversion of this moment. And that's what this movie is, right? It's a micro-budget film that gets so much out of little things. And I think this might be the best example of it. Alex, talk to me about the tubby.
I mean, okay, to begin with, I love the Duplass brothers productions. Like, all their stuff is interesting to me. I'm unabashedly a huge fan of these guys. I think Mark Duplass is so shockingly dynamic in like all the roles he does, and it's really fascinating when he takes on stuff like this. And this particularly is just, I mean, it's incredible. The tubby. Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's hard to talk about, honestly, because like we've been going through this with my kid. Like, my kid has had like this horrible aversion to baths. So we've like it's really weird to watch it now.
Is he pig-petting or what?
Like my wife and I were watching it and I'm like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable, isn't it?
Right? It's fucking horrifying.
Like, yeah, because like they're horrible. Like, this is a moment, yeah, like, but also it's not a moment you're supposed to like pervert in any way. Like, it's a shared moment of like, listen, this is how we separate ourselves from the animals. This is like teaching your kid, like, hey, don't lick yourself. Like, get in the bath and we'll clean you that way, you know?
He's like cat rules, Dad.
That's what it is, though. Like, you separate yourself from the animals. You're teaching your kid how to live in a society. So, like, there is this, and then on top of that, there is this warmth. Like, the same thing, like when your kid's born, they have you take your like they have me take my shirt off so that you could do skin on skin, that kind of thing. There is like a level of that too. So it's this strange thing, and like, to me, to invite someone else into that situation, even in the assumed situation we're in, is so uncomfortable and so not true to the aesthetic of the moment, I guess. Mm-hmm. And because also, like, there's still this wall up too between Aaron and Joseph. This is the first thing, by the way, Aaron has to film with Joseph, which is like, you're just like, oh man. He even says it in the movie. He's like, "We're going hard. Is that cool? Like, we're going much deeper than this."
He's throwing the red flag right in Aaron's face. Right
like,
I'd be like, "I have a tripod. Is that okay?" Like,
yeah,
I'm not
it's
really
flat out there. Yeah, I'd be like, I honestly would be like, "Do you just want the camera to do it yourself? Like, I'll wait outside. I don't have to listen, or I could also leave. This is weird. Like, anything." Yeah. It's a really fascinating moment, and like, it sets the tone for the rest of the movie. Like, it sets the tone for at least that first 45-minute block of the movie, and simply saying, like, none of this is going to be okay. Like, absolutely everything about this guy is going to be, like, so far over the line. You have no way of going back. So you're sitting there watching Aaron be interested and do the documentary thing, which is, like, hang with your subject. Don't look away. If you look away, you're going to miss the thing that's really good. And what's fascinating is that I don't really think we miss anything that's good for the first 45 minutes until he shuts the camera off, quote unquote.
The trick of this scene is funny because this is an exploitative scene we would see in a documentary about someone who had lost their dad.
Totally.
Right? They would play this movie and be like, this was how me and my dad bonded. And we'd be watching that in an emotionally exploitative way.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you look at it through that lens, and then you add the movie today for me had this Psycho thing, where when you watch Psycho the second time and you know what Norman Bates is, that fucking sandwich eating scene is no longer just we're getting exposition out of the way. It's a fucking horrifying pendulum swinging over your head. Mm-hmm. And that's what this scene really did to me. What did you make of this, Jessica?
It's probably one of the most uncomfortable scenes I think I've ever been through. I like because you just can't believe it's happening. It's so funny because I think one of my favorite parts of this entire movie is when he goes through his whole spiel and then he's like, "All right, I'm gonna get in the tub,"
Yeah.
and he's like, "You're gonna get in the tub? What? Like, am I supposed to follow?" And he does follow,
Yeah.
but I just was
Oh,
like,
hilarious.
and now that I'm thinking about it, it's so interesting because I would think that anybody would be like, oh, surely he doesn't want me to follow him. But Aaron does. And that's interesting.
And
But
surely he almost keeps asking him not to, but Aaron does.
he does. Man, I gotta watch this again now.
He's
Um,
making a documentary.
I think that scene, like the tubby time scene, is one of the best points. Like you guys said, it like sets the tone, but it also, I think everybody's really self-aware at that point that we're in a found footage movie where you are forced, you're like, and that's the point of a lot of found footage in horror, is that you're being forced to be put in somebody's shoes and you can't leave. There is no leaving.
Right.
There is no like, what are we going to do? Because you are stuck with that person and that person's perspective and what information they know and their character. So this isn't the person running to the front door. You're stuck with that person. And I really like that jump from that point where you are literally just watching this guy, like Mark Duplass is just, he's so brilliantly like charming, and he has such like a warmth to his face. He looks like the guy next door. Like,
yeah, like the ultimate best friend next door. Yeah,
yeah, we were just like, oh my god, I love this guy. I would have him over like for a beer on a Friday, and then we would like, and he's got a wife and all these kids, and he's so nice, and he keeps his lawn clean, but he also has like this weird like totally deadpan like blank stare in his eyes, and he like turns it on and off, and he even turns it off while he's being charming, which is so frightening.
absolutely.
He's so good at it, and I think that this is one of those points where you can't, it is such a weird perversion of such a innocent, nice, like happy kind of memory that people like, or that like people make with their children. And it's weird because it's so, you can't damn him right away because it's like, oh, maybe he's just being overly sharing, which is the point of his film that he wants me to do.
Yes.
But like, what do you say? What you like? Do you let somebody know that this is making you uncomfortable? Is this too much?
Yeah.
Is this?
I think the lesson of the movie is, let them know right away. No, but this is the funny thing about the scene too, because I was like, man, this scene is so much like more intense to me than like Scarface, right? Where it's like chainsaws in a tub. Like I'd rather watch that any day than this fucking scene. And it's funny because once you know what's happening, all I could think about is what is going on in his head when he's delivering this moment and making Aaron watch this heartfelt moment, and the depravity of that. That's the stuff that really reaches down and haunts you, right? And this is also where they set up the next kind of dynamic of this early part of the film is he keeps talking about things he did with his dad, right? So he talks about that, and then we see Peach Fuzz, right? The iconic Peach Fuzz. And he's like, oh, this is something that my dad made up, right? And he had a little song for it. And once we find out all this, I was kind of, I found myself scratching my head by the end of the film of what to make of Joseph laying out this whole setup with his dad, Alex. What did you make of this? Using his dad as kind of the launch point for this ruse.
I mean, to me, it's just another form of guilt. Like, you go up to someone's house to make a movie for them because they're definitely they're dying and they want to make instructional videos for their child, which again,
this is like the Dark Universe Paddleton, if you've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a dark.
There's a lot of this, like, again, like I won't bring it up again, but there are documentaries made about these kinds of things where people want to leave behind stuff for their children. And like, this is the kind of thing that you do, like, that gets really intimate, that gets really personal. And I think that bringing up your father, bringing up this like inherited love you have, this inherited type of feeling you have with your parental figure, like, it's just another form of manipulation. Like, Aaron could leave at any time. If like here's my thing. If he had said my dad was a dick, My dad never spent time with me, so I'm going to spend as much time as I can before I'm gone, and this is for my child after he leaves. Like, that to me makes a sympathetic character out of Joseph. So of course you want to stick around. This is a guy though who has a good wife, seemingly decent life, has a very, had a father who spent enough time with him, had a father who had enough wherewithal, so to speak, to, put on a terrifying fucking wolf mask and
come here, lad. Let me sing his song.
Put on this horrifying wolf mask and scare hey guys, it's okay, I'm Peach Fizz. Like, it's not a thing. I mean, my dad
as a parent, you're immediately like, not a chance. I would put on Pikachu sunglasses that are like from here up, and my kid cried for 40 minutes. So
my kid doesn't even like me wearing hats. So like,
oh, here's a funny one too. When you have a giant beard and you shave. Yeah, so you have a giant beard, you shave, and then your son is like, who's this invader in my home? Because they just think the beard is built into your face.
Right. So clearly,
yeah.
But like, trying to bring up this inherited love, or I guess inherited's the wrong word, but either way, like trying to bring up some sort of familial ancestry with like a fucking wolf mask that you keep sentimentally like in your closet. You're like, also, sorry, this is like one of my favorite like filmmaking pieces is just like the fact that the mask is just facing outright.
But that's because he set him up. It was part of and that's when he pulls the hats out and he goes, twinsies. And that's another one of those, I know what's happening.
Aaron's also like the jumpiest like filmmaker of all time. Like everything scares him. Which I feel
like he has a right to be in this one.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sure. Like,
well, also the third time you jump out and make me pee my pants, I quit. Like, I absolutely
see. Yeah, that's
quit.
The other thing too. There's at least one moment here where like when they're out in the woods heading to the Heart Rock, and he like scares the shit out of him and be like, "Dude, I'm gone." Like, it's not what I signed up for. Like, I didn't come here so you could just scare me. I'm taking my 1,000 and I'm fucking leaving. I'll send you the footage.
Now, that's something I wanted to ask you about, Jessica. So this is a moment that I love. I think this is integral to this opening part, right? Which is kind of just watching this weirdo. We know what's going on, right? You could, even before you've seen it the first time, you somewhat kind of suss out the dynamic here. Now, this is the first scene where we set the camera down, and instead, this is where he breaks the ruse for the first time, right? That this is for my son. He sets the camera down at the Heart Rock, and he pulls the filmmaker into the shot with them. Mm-hmm. And so now it's a shared story with these two instead of him and his son. Mm-hmm. And we see this again at the diner where he goes, hey, can I film you? Mm-hmm. I would love to hear your thoughts on that dynamic of once the camera, because now we're about 30 minutes in, I think. The camera's starting to turn, and now we're putting Aaron in the foreground.
I think that's where everybody needs to realize that Joseph is a completely unreliable narrator.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And I love that. I love that. I'm like, and some people actually really don't like that, but I'm like, yeah, take me halfway through a story and then tell me that everything I know is completely unreliable. Yeah. I would like that because he does it so well, and it's such a. That's when you realize that it's all a tactic. And that this is not about him as a father. This is not about him and any of his emotional connection to anything. He was using that to bring you in. I know that if you share family stuff with me, I'm going to listen. I'm going to sympathize. I'm going to empathize. It's not as bare bones as you can get, like when you're talking, when you're being intimate with somebody and sharing. So, I really like that because once that reversal comes into play and he does pull Aaron into like, share this moment with me. Now it's totally based on him. He even like carves their name into the rock, and it's just like, okay, with the heart around it,
which you're supposed to assume is him and his wife at first.
Oh, Angela!
Is that? Oh my God! I never even got that. Good one, Alex.
Oh, really?
I never got that at all. I thought it was Aaron because I was like, this creep is like locked on to him. Like, I didn't even think that.
Yeah, no, that's why I like assumed. That's again part of the ruse.
Like, that's another thing where it's like,
Well done.
Could you go at this person like, hey man, like that's really weird that you're carving my initial? And he's like, I'm not. It's my wife's initial.
It's my wife.
Right.
The fuck,
like,
dude?
you're the weird one.
Way to ruin our sweet lake baptism moment, you piece of shit. But even that moment is really fun too, because that's when Aaron reveals the like, yeah, sometimes I just didn't want to stop playing, would pee my pants, and I was like, well, that is very on the nose for what we've seen today, Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron pissed the bed.
Yeah, here's a question I had for you guys. Because, well, I know, Alex, you want to talk about the iconic shot of the movie, which is one of those, I love the staircase shot as well, right? The dark stranger, the masked silhouette. It's one of those moments, and it like almost made me cry watching it. Not just because I cry at every movie a bunch, but
True.
I love that it's one of those tipping the scales moments of cinema, right? You're like, with all the money and all the budget and better equipment and special effects, I was like, you cannot capture a better image than that, right? This kind of gritty, because it's just telling so much story in one simple shot. That all the fucking, studio power behind you cannot get more out of a shot than that.
Right.
Walk me through that moment, Alex.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head that it is like the summation of the turn of the movie. Like that is where we realize like this is about to get just downright sinister.
He becomes the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, like at first it was just like you're like, oh, there's a lot of discomfort with someone just like revealing these like personal tidbits about themselves, and then you make me talk about my pee pants. Like I don't like this. Like I'd be doing the same thing. I'm like, dude, it's dark, it's late. Like I need to go home. Like getting down the mountain's gonna suck right now. Like I don't want to, that's all fair game. That shot being the rabbit hole makes a lot of sense, but like from just like a filmmaking perspective, I do love like you think about like the great shots of all time, and it's like the bridge shot from Manhattan, Conrad Hall's like shot from Road to Perdition, like all these things that require massive amounts of coordination, massive amounts of budget. And then, like, it's literally motion lights, and you just put the guy in front of the motion light, and it's this perfect silhouette of terror. Like, it made the fucking cover, it made the fucking poster. Like, that is like that magic thing about movies that I don't think anyone can really, like, understand, is just the pure happenstance of an amazing thing like that is just like, there it is. Like, there's your moment right there. There's your moment where hey, it's all downhill from here. Absolutely nothing is going to go right.
Yeah,
like,
climb up the hill so you can go down at light speed.
Like, and it's so specifically shot, like, and because you can't see his face, you have no idea who's at. Like, this is this awesome Wizard of Oz moment. Like, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Like, he's a different person. He's changing before our eyes, and we don't even notice it because we're so entranced by the shot, but also because we cannot see his face for the life of us. That is fucking... People talk about the poetry of motion and all this other frilly stuff when it comes to movies. Like, man, there it is right there. Like, how can you not be romantic about making a movie when that's just sitting right in front of you?
That's exactly how I felt. Jessica, what did you make of this moment into the turn? Because this is when Aaron's keys are gone. We have the shut-off camera confession of the animalistic night that he spent with his wife. What did you make of this beginning turn of the story?
I love that scene as well. I think it is one of my favorite shots because it's so, like you said, you can't see his face, and he's also blocking the exit, which is just...
Oh, I didn't think about it. Yeah.
Terrifying. It's almost like, like when you're in a haunted house and you have to go forward and that's the only way to get out. But that person in that costume is standing right there and that person's not going to hurt you. But in this case, that's definitely not it's the exact opposite. And I think that's really interesting. And one of the things that I noticed this time watching it was, a lot of times when you have movies like this, where it's like this predator kind of prey mentality, the mask is always the first thing. Like the predator is always in the mask at first. Mm-hmm. And in this case, that it's the opposite, where Joseph is unmasked pretty much the entire time. It's not until about the end where he puts the mask on. And I think that's a really interesting little, like, flip or like a deconstruction of this predator trope that we see a lot in horror, which was, I was like, that's so brilliant. It's so original, and it's so off base, but also, exactly what you would expect for something like that to happen. That like just so interesting. And he does, it's like the Chekhov's gun where he shows you the mask at first.
Yeah.
And so you're wondering,
you see the mask, you see the axe, like this is a Chekhov's like specifically written ransom note for the rest of
yeah, and the whole time, even like even with the story about what he does with his wife, he is telling you, he is telling Aaron exactly what's going to happen this entire time. And I know I didn't really see the ending coming. I'll always admit that. No. I'll never be one of those people who's like,
not like that.
I saw that coming, but you do see it coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, like, that is that brilliant movie making magic.
I mean, he flat out asks in the middle of the movie. Like, it's incredible.
He does, yeah.
The telegraphing that goes on. You're just like, how did it? And then it gets to the end, you are like, how did I not just like, was it just because it's that obvious? You're like, how did I not figure this one out? And you're like, man. But this is actually, so once we're past this scene, though, and all the stuff starts coming out, this is the thing that, because like we've been on the pod talking about this before. I am not a huge fan of found footage movies. Like, found footage horror does not do a lot
I'm not
for me
either,
a lot of the
honestly.
time.
I gotta change your mind.
And I don't.
Oh, okay. Challenge accepted.
And honestly, this one is like, for me, this one is the upper echelon of found footage for me, because
sure, yeah.
The reason I don't like a lot of found footage movies is because the pacing for me is really terrible a lot of the time. Like, there's no concept of how to actually use the camera. The camera is essentially just an appendage that no one understands what they're using it for.
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me, and this is why Creep sort of stands alone, because Creep is, you're supposing that Aaron is a videographer, he's a filmmaker, so he understands depth of field, all this other shit that you're supposed to know when you're operating a camera, which makes the tension pulling when all of this stuff starts happening. Even like once Joseph passes out, and the part that always fucking gets me is when he comes out of the bathroom and starts looking around the house.
How is that scene so tense? It's crazy.
There's a level of tension because the camera work is effortless. Like, there is nothing drawing attention to the fact that he's holding the camera. He's literally filming a scene. Like, the fact that it's that meta and like that obvious is shocking to me, but I am so terrified the entire time. Like, I told my wife, I'm like, are you like, she was like holding her hand up while we were watching the movie, and I'm like, do you want me to fast forward? And she goes, oh, hell no. And I'm like, okay, good, because this is fucking tense, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible. And then it's nothing in the movie is like a shock reveal to me. Like, but I'm still fucking trash bag scared the fucking shit out of me. I was like, ah!
Well, okay, so that's the scene I locked onto too, because not only do we find out in this moment that Angie is his sister, not his, and honestly, there's a part of that where, I love a good movie conspiracy. I wondered if this is someone that he had paid to call and say this.
Very
Why
plausible.
would his actual sister call right at this moment? He would have his phone not on silent. It feels, for someone like Joseph, it feels a little... That's like the one point in the movie where you're like, this is very convenient movie plotting stuff. But if you think of Joseph as the director of this movie for an audience of one, you're like, oh shit, maybe he put another Craigslist ad, hey, can you call and say this at this time?
Right.
And set Aaron up for the finale of his film. Because that's what this movie, and the trash bags especially, it harkened for me back to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Where, because remember that when he just leaves the suitcase, and all we see is the suitcase, and it's fucking horrifying. Because we know what's in there. We don't have to see it. Henry beautifully does that, where a lot of it we don't have to see. It's just fucking scary because we see the aftermath, right? And what I think becomes great about this as a found footage is so many of them just do it. Like, I've seen where like, oh, I'll stab you with the lens of the camera and get blood on it. Like, cameras are swords. You're like, they're delicate, like little boxes that'll explode. And so people use it to derail the narrative sometimes. But this one because of course a filmmaker like, Aaron he would be so natural to look through the lens instead of his own eyes. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
And what becomes really scary about the found footage effect in this is that you realize, to Jessica's point, right? Oh, now we're watching maybe a true crime doc or something's off. Like we're watching this in nefarious settings. We realize, and the movie bears this out at the end, but I realized halfway through, I was like, oh, fuck, we're watching a movie for one person. This is a one-person film, right? The only audience is the killer. They watch this back to get their rocks off or whatever. So it's an audience of one movie, but we're watching it too. So it feels dangerous. It feels like we should not be seeing what we're seeing. And again, it's this beautiful thing the movie does where they don't have all the resources, but by being insanely clever, the movie becomes so much bigger in scale than it truly is. What did you make of this, Jessica?
I like my gore and I like my special effects. I'm an artist at heart, so anything like that, I'm just like that. Like, I can sit through movies that are. I love the blood. I like imagery. I like to see all that scary shit. I am also equally impressed when movies can get to me on any level with hardly any actual violence and hardly no blood whatsoever. I don't think that there's a single drop in the entire movie. Right? No.
Yeah, I don't think there is on it.
No,
even the finale takes place at a very far distance.
Where it's very far distance. Yeah. You don't even see it.
That's crazy. I didn't even think of that.
So far away. I think that
a movie with an axe murder that has no blood.
Yeah, someone gets axed in the head in the movie and you don't see any blood. So it's like I think that that's really impressive to me, and that's some of the things that they do. And it's like, I love that Joseph kept scaring him, even when he asked him, like he knew it made him uncomfortable. And that's one of the worst things that you can do is let somebody like him know what gets you.
My wife would agree with you 100%. I do this all the time.
I was like, oh, he can like, now he knows that you don't like that. And you are a jumpy filmmaker. And I think that that's like really cool because that sets up a couple of good jump scares. They're pretty solid. But it also creates that tension, like you guys were talking about, like that room scene where he's like, and it's only because he's been building up all these like little weird jump out parts that eventually that's going to happen again. And you wait for it and you wait for it and you're holding your breath because you know that setup is coming. And then it almost doesn't happen. And then you let your guard down and then it does happen.
You're like, it's over. Ow! Ow! He gets you twice. The double jump.
That's like one of the best point, like especially in a third act, sometimes a lot of films fall apart in that third act, and when you actually really stick it, that's impressive too.
It's beautiful. Yeah, and I'm not a huge proponent of jump scares, but again, I think this movie has this built in. They thought it out so precisely.
Yeah.
That they're not jump scares like, oh, well, we have a ghost, but we don't believe in it. Like some of the Conjuring universe movies sometimes do. And I'm not here to litigate the jumps. If you like your jump scares, great, man.
Yeah, do your thing.
That's fine. Do your thing. It's not always for me, but this one, it's built in because it's Joseph fucking fiddling with him, right?
I mean,
Joseph's just wiggling the knife, so it makes sense that there are jump scares narratively. Yeah, and it's not cheap.
So much control, and because they could have made about 30 other jump scares at any point of the movie, and I admire when filmmakers have control to not do that. That's especially when you can get your audience. It's found footage. You can make anybody jump, and that's just like it's an easy medium for jump scares, especially with like the first
totally.
Because every time the camera moves, it's like
yeah, exactly. I think you're anticipating it a lot of the time, and I think that's why this movie is so fascinating, and that it really fucks with your anticipatory nerve. Like, there's no way to guess when something's going to happen. Like I was too busy yelling at my television last night at Aaron going outside looking for Joseph. Like, dude, get back in the fucking house, you idiot! Like, why are you going?
Grab a bludgeon, something,
like be an adult. My God, and then
be an adult, you fucking child.
and then so he and then there is like the jump, because I was too busy berating this guy for being a fucking idiot, and then like the jump happens, like, Oh my god. And then you like slowly see like someone's like letting the air out of the balloon while he's like, listen, I know everything. And I think this is what makes the Peach Fuzz door thing that much more oddly funny. Like this
The way
should
he's
not
rubbing his ass on the door.
this should not be a comedic moment, like at all. This is a fucking depraved person with a wolf mask on who clearly has nefarious intentions. There's nothing about this that should be entertaining or like goofy. I fucking could not stop laughing. I almost woke up my kid. Like I was just like, why is it funny because it's like cutting the tension, or is it funny because like this guy deserves it? Like there's a point where I was sitting there, I'm like, Aaron, you fucking idiot. Like you totally deserve what's about to happen to you.
Or is it what Jessica said, right? It's this deconstruction to where the cool thing
That
about
too.
this is that Mark Duplass's face is scarier than the slasher mask, right?
Yeah.
So by the time you see this, it's inherently not as scary. He's rubbing his ass on the door. So they're kind of taking the piss out of this moment that we've all been trained to be the most afraid of. Jessica, I wanted to ask you, so the movie transitions now. We talked about this a little bit with Aaron's like cashing in on his, oh shit, I might have found something here. And he's still being hunted, right?
Right.
This feels like a really odd way to kind of reboot the movie this late, right? To then do this. Now we're going to transition and Aaron is going to become our focal point now. Did this part of the movie work for you?
Yes. Yeah, it worked for me.
Some hesitation there.
That's deep thinking. We don't do a lot of that here.
Well, good thing is I do it too much, so
nice. We'll meet in the middle.
It's a good. I like when filmmakers have the balls to actually go and do something a little bit different and kind of turn things on their heads. And there's so many different twists in this movie, and some of them not necessarily as big as the point of view changing and all of that. Or like when we see that he's actually just watching the video of the garbage bags, like that's like the big twist is like, oh, Aaron's not dead. Now we're entering.
That was strange. That one was strange to me. It kind of stopped me in my tracks. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
But it's cool because it's almost like, because this is, to your point, I love that because, everyone's so trained with Saves the Cat, right? And like, I don't need a Saves the Peach Fuzz version of this movie, right? Like, I like that it meanders, right? It feels like a real life kind of stalking between these two guys. And that moment, because there's a really funny moment in there before we get to the ending where he's doing his second nightmare and there's a bang. And he's like, okay. He sets the camera down, right? It's perfectly framed where the door's in the middle and he's in the middle saying, hey, who's in here? Like a poorly overly acted moment, right? And this was brilliant because I was like, oh my God, I was right. He's writing this documentary. And I was like, what if he's the one who kicked the fucking wall? And now he's doing his hero shot. But when he moves, Joseph is just sitting there leering in the background. And I was like, oh my God, that fucking scared the shit out of me.
Same.
Because it's so subtle. And it's funny too, because right as I'm thinking that Aaron's full of shit, there is Joseph. Almost like he's watching it and smiling like me. I thought that was fucking brilliant.
I think that end change in perspective is also letting us know who the winner is going to be at the end of this.
Yeah.
It's a clear.
Yes.
It's just okay. Now you're going to watch how this ends, and you know who's going to come out on the other side. I didn't know that at first, obviously. I still never anticipated the end at all.
Yeah.
I still don't. There's still some part of me that I'm like, is there nobody there? And it is this weird, like you were talking about the environment, how like at night there's nobody around and there would be nobody there to help him. And he kind of lures him in with this weird, like, it's not a false promise because it is a public park and there are people
wide
there.
Open, middle of the day.
It's open, middle of the day. Like, and also, again, it's a very touristy area up there. Like, people don't just
Didn't
like
it show
There-
somebody in there?
There would be 50 people Instagram influencing around the shores of that lake.
it's scenic. It's the kind of place that they do paddle boats. Like, it's one of those things where I was just like, that was a weird thing. Because honestly, yeah, like the way this ends, and I honestly was expecting it to be like,
You
middle
know
of the
there's
night.
going to be a murder.
yeah, like
For sure. Who's it
obviously,
gonna be?
like someone is going to get killed. Like, there's no way around it. Like, this is just like we're hurtling towards this inevitable end. But like, I am very curious still the entire time. It is weird to me that that's the choice, and I honestly was expecting it to be like the middle of the night. Like, that was what I was like. Maybe it'll be around dusk when people are gone, and like that's how, like, do it under cover of darkness. Middle of the day though, I could not wrap my head around it. Like, I was just sitting there watching, and I was just like, what?
I loved it though, man.
I mean, it's I don't have a problem with it at all. Like, this is like, it's so
Yeah.
stark and contrasting to like
Yeah.
any other kill you've seen in a movie like this.
Well, it's also one of the first times in the movie that we pull way back, right? This
Yeah.
is a really far away long shot, right? Everything else is really personal, intimate. What I liked about that, and during the day, it's a little off kilter, right? It's not perfectly framed. There is, it's a pacing mixed with an inevitability, right? There's just we absolutely know what's coming, and we're just sitting there waiting for it. And again, it's like we're trapped in this car. We're a captive audience, and we just have to watch the slaughter now. That's all we're here for. And I think the fact that it's the middle of the day, it's just because this is the thing that struck me, to Jessica's point about no blood. When he puts the mask on, he walks up behind him, he swings the axe to his head. It's just so it's not a cinematic moment. It's just a bump,
No.
hits him again, bump, and then it's done, and that's it. And so you're like, this whole journey's just led to this very workman-like. It's the same way when I'm like, well, gotta take the trash out. You know, like,
Yeah.
that's not a cinematic image. I just
No.
drop the trash in and leave, and that's exactly how it played. And I think that was such a fucking beautiful way to end this. And when we pull back, and now we are in the audience for one, right? And he's making the movie for himself, and we're seeing the movie we shouldn't see. I love the line he says when he's like, that's why I love you the most of all of them, is because you were a good person to the end. No matter what I did, you still believed I wouldn't harm you. That's why you never looked back. Because again, it's addressing the thing that we're all screaming at the TV, which is he whips his duster, and you're like, you can hear that. That makes
Yeah.
noise.
You can hear everything.
Yeah.
You walk someone.
He
it's
lifts the
a
axe
quiet-
to where it would be parallel with the bench.
It's a
You can see
quiet
that.
lake. You're telling me you can't hear people behind you? Get the fuck out of here.
Because he's not thinking that it's going to end badly. And even
Right.
if he jump scares him again, right? Maybe now he's ready to get scared, right? He knows he's going to get the ending of his awesome documentary, and it's all going to be worth it. And he's going to help this guy who asked him to help him. He needed a friend.
Right.
So Aaron's being the lamb leads to this slaughter. It absolutely is an incontrovertible ending that we had to get to. And I love the way it just plays.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, and I don't think the double jump scare cheapens that at all. It's just kind of a fun.
By the
see you
way,
later.
am I the only one who jumped when he like screamed at the camera and then screamed at the camera again? Because like I legitimately,
I had absolutely forgotten that scene
Okay, good.
happened.
because I was like, I have to own up to this on the pod tomorrow. Is like I literally like jumped out of my out off the couch. Like I was
I'm
like,
watching my mom's 8-pound dog, and I sent him in the air. Like, thankfully, he landed right back down on my pillowy body. But I was like,
all
oh!
right, good. I don't feel nearly as wimpy as I did 5 minutes ago. Great.
Because they get you with the first one, and
No.
you're like, there's going to be a tag, right? So you're kind of ready. But the second scream, it's like getting smacked from, like, you know, the peripheral, like they used to do in Jackass. So they'd run up behind each other and smack them. That's what that second one
Right.
feels like. Jessica, what do you make of this as the bow of the film?
It's so like it's so mean.
It
And
really is. It really is.
I told you I'm a very nice person. I like that it's mean. It's a really just kind of it almost like the way that axe makes that sound. That's the way that movie kind of ends for me. Is this like blunt? It's over. Most of the time, when you get into a bad situation with an individual like that, that's probably how it goes. And it shows how I like how disposable he was almost to him. And
Yeah.
then you wind up seeing like, and it kind of like goes back to the unreliable narrator where it's like, was the person before him? Because I know that I don't think that they do that in this first one. I know that in the second one he takes on like Aaron's name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
when he tells the story of it, he calls Aaron Buddy. Yeah.
oh yes, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's really interesting because you're like, well, who was Joseph before? And
Right.
what
Well,
all
I
the
thought
things
it would be his dad until you see the cabinet of tapes. I thought Joseph was his father.
Yeah.
And then you see the tapes and you're like, oh shit, dad would have been like 40 people ago.
yeah,
Like, this is insane.
it's so it's so just it's goes with this brilliant theme that I think that it works so well is that everything is just so uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable that this character that we've been with for this whole movie with Aaron, and you kind of, whether you sympathize with him or not, you at least have this sort of relationship. It's like that with a lot of found footage. You have some sort of relationship being behind their camera, and I think it's really sad when he's done. That's it. He's gone, and
Yeah.
a lot of that makes you kind of put yourself back in his shoes and look at what mistakes did he make? Does it start from not leaving at a certain point, or does it start with taking the job in the first place? And is there any way to really avoid something like this? Because there almost isn't.
No,
Yeah,
it's,
and it violates Final Girl rules, right? Where it's Aaron is one of those characters where he truly, whether he's trying to milk it at the end or not, he never does anything bad in the movie. He's just a pretty decent person. Does that matter to you, Alex, by the end? Does that make it harder that he doesn't kind of do the he deserves to get the axe move?
no, like, it doesn't really. Like,
I wanted to swing it. No, I'm just kidding.
Here's my thing. And I've said this already on the pod. He's a willing participant. If you're going to film yourself talking about your nightmares and then, like an idiot, go outside in your underwear because someone hit your window.
Because he's a good person who believes he's safe, Alex.
Yeah, well,
Idiot maybe.
Yeah, well, also, like, I'm sorry, I have to say this. You living in LA, you have one of those metal gate doors. Close the metal gate door. What is wrong with you?
You're right. He deserved it. No, that was bad. I also liked when he saw the trash can tipped over and he went, raccoons. I was like, what the fuck? I was like,
see,
like,
and that, to me, that is the open fallacy of the movie. Is like Aaron is trying so hard to think that nothing bad will happen to him. Because look, we all live in this perpetual. This is honestly like this is a treatise on how we all operate in the world. We all operate in the world assuming nothing bad will happen to us generally.
Tragedy is over there.
We don't walk outside our door and assume, oh, well, there's a chance like a car bomb could go off. Like, we don't live our lives that way. So when you are a guy who wants $1,000 to go film a guy for 8 hours, you assume the best, because if you don't, how are you ever going to get out of the house? And I think that's something that's really fascinating about this movie, and what Creep does for the viewer itself is it assumes the best of every single person, even Joseph, who we know has like the worst intentions 20 minutes into the movie. Like, how do you not know? Like, it's telegraphed, and yet we all are sitting there hoping this ends with them like getting
hugging
an ice
it
cream
out.
cone.
Yeah, hugging it out and actually being friends.
That's it.
I'm sorry about that Peach Fuzz nonsense. It was so
My
good.
bad. Hey,
Yeah,
listen,
my boss
Peach
was
Fuzz,
riding my ass.
that one's on me. That one's on me, guys.
Yeah. Jessica, write a love letter to Creep. Why do you love this movie so much? Why will it keep you coming back?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that when it comes to Creep, I like something original when it comes to horror. I like everything when it comes to horror. I like all the kinds of movies. I like remakes. I like bad movies. I like great movies. But I really have this like this incredible fascination with movies that do something completely different and have something original and authentic. And when that works with, it works based on like just dialogue. There's not a lot of special effects. It's something that's very personable. It's something that can be interpreted a bunch of different ways because I really like to dissect. It's also really fucking terrifying.
Yes.
And it does, and it's given us some bouts of imagery. It just checks off all the boxes for me when it comes to a good movie. So, or when it comes to a good horror movie, that is. So that's why I love it. It's
good movie too. I think it's a good movie.
It's a good movie. It's completely original. Completely original. Aside from maybe like the cable guy. I think
wow. What a
guy. Instead of the cheese on his face, it's a peach fuzz mask. Same movie. Exact same. Okay, well now I will always see the creep as the cable guy.
I'm so man. So
Duplass needs to go back and redub the whole thing with a lisp.
Yeah. I'm watching it. I was like, I can't think of any movie that's like this. There's no movie like it. None at all. And he was like, the cable guy is exactly like this. I was like, oh, shh.
Exactly's doing a lot of work there. It is also a stalker film for sure. I mean, Fatal Attraction, if they had boiled a baby stuffed wolf, maybe. I don't know.
Perhaps.
But, yeah, I think what I'll always take away from this movie is it's the balancing of the scales of films, right? Is that if you really are creative and the artistry is there, you can achieve so much, even with the lesser resources. I think this movie just over-delivers and overachieves in every scene. And yeah, I think it's one of those, I appreciate movies that can scare the shit out of me without having to kind of gross me out. They're not daring me to look away, with like horror effects and get someone getting gutted, like he describes in one of those scenes or whatever. It's just, as I gut someone, the universe unveils itself to me. That's a movie. That's a scene that would have been in a big studio version of this, right? This is not trying to take my eyes away. It won't let my eyes escape, and it's still scary as fuck. That's what I'll take away from this movie.
Agreed.
All right, that's it for Creep. Part 2, the cable guy.
Oh my god, that'd be so fun.
The cable guy, part 2.
I'm going to have to get some of our video editor friends to mash those two up for us.
Hell yes.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
I'm going to start listening to this with that Jefferson Airplane song. I'm going to watch this with the Jefferson Airplane song playing in the background.
We can play that over that last scene, yeah. Jessica, thank you so much for making the time. You were amazing.
Thank you.
Oh my god, thank you. Are you kidding?
Yeah, this was a great talk. You were a delight. Would you like to tell everyone one more time where they can find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is JJRose7, and it's JAYJAYROSE 7.
Awesome. And I'll make sure all this is in all the show notes and details. Make sure you find Jessica. You can thank us later. Seriously, from the bottom of our hearts, we so appreciate you bringing Creep to the show today. Perfection.
Yes, it was an awesome time. I'm so glad that I had somebody to talk to about it.
Well, we also are going to bring you back for October if you'll come back.
Absolutely.
You can pick another horror movie, whatever you would like.
Okay.
So start thinking now, yeah. All right, bye everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.